We've got Rajeev Samant, who's the promoter, MD, and CEO at Sula Vineyards. Thanks so much for taking time out and joining in. I just want to start off by clearing the air because earlier there was a 116 crore rupee excise duty notice from the government. It was set aside by the court, so no financial implications on the back of this. Just clarify.
No financial implications at all. And we have been advised by our lawyers in this case that we have a very strong case. So we are not very disturbed by this at this point. This does happen in our sphere of business from time to time.
Okay, Rajeev, let's talk numbers. An 18% year-on-year growth in your revenue. Can you break it up for us in terms of your overall volumes and value?
Absolutely. The first thing to note is that this continues very much on the theme that we've been talking about since we went public, which is the strong growth in our own wines that are produced right here in India. So the Sula brand, which is by far India's strongest wine brand, plus our more premium Source range and Rasa range. That's really where this growth is coming from. We continue to move away from the imported spirits and wine segment and just concentrate on our own wines. So in terms of volume growth, it's probably something close to 15%, but the value growth for our own wines has zoomed past 20% growth, and that's really where the profits come from.
Right. Rajeev, the other thing I wanted to ask about, purely because there have been so many, weather disturbances, if you will, wanted to understand how the grape season has been this year and how are the prices going to be as compared to the last year?
So, of course, the monsoon is still ongoing, but by the looks of it, our grape harvest is going to be just absolutely fine. In fact, it's shaping up to be a very good grape harvest in terms of quantity as well as quality. And that's going to be the fourth year in a row that we are expecting a good harvest. So we have been totally spared from the impact of climate change as well as weather disturbances. Having said that, I should point out that there's a lot of work that goes on in the background for me to give such good news. It's not just fortuitous. It is, a tribute to the work done by our viticulture team and our winemaking team over the past decade, getting ready for this thing that is climate change.
How much more can you expand in the Nasik, facility? Because as you will grow, you will have to start planning for a future. Is there a challenge which could happen beyond the threshold there?
We don't see any challenge at all. So in terms of the supply of grapes, Maharashtra is one of the biggest grape growing regions in the world, actually. But of course, they are all table grapes. But wherever table grapes can grow, there you can also grow wine grapes. And we have, table grape farmers lining up to plant wine grape for us. So that's on the supply side. In terms of our capex, in terms of our production capacity, last year we put in a huge new building, which added something like 50% in terms of building capacity. And every year now we have the space in that building to continue to build out the tanks, the storage and fermentation tanks that we need in order to provide that growth. So absolutely no issues. And we have plenty of space left, plenty of land left at all our production facilities in Maharashtra and Karnataka for even future expansion.
Wine in India, if I look at global averages, Indian consumption is at the bottom of the pyramid. The global trends, if anybody looks at it, the runway, I think, is a multi-decade runway. But when I look at the product category for India's biggest winemaker, the growth is only 18% for a base which is small. And for a category where the scope is very large, 18% is good, but not very impressive. Why is that?
So Nikunj, I get asked this question a lot. It must be remembered that Sula is the leader in premium wines. That is wines of quality where, a discerning wine drinker is going to taste and say, wow, that tastes good. And when you're making good wines of quality, there is a certain limit to the growth that you can have every year. It is not, like widgets, and it's not like just taking grain alcohol and using some flavoring. There's grapes involved, there's agriculture involved, there's a lot of back end involved. So even a growth rate of 18 to 20% is not that easy to deliver. We are possibly one of the fastest growing wine companies in the world. And this is definitely the market which is going to see the greatest demand growth for wine in the next decade. But yes, there is going to be a limit on the upper side, giving more than 20% year after year, more vineyards, more capacity, and making the wines really well at a 20% growth becomes very challenging.
So Rajeev, what one has seen is, and across categories, I'm not only talking liquor here, there is a clear shift of the consumer towards premiumization, towards luxury. Is that something that you're also seeing in your category of product? And then in that sense, do you also change your product mix?
Absolutely. So that's something that we've been very focused on over the last couple of years, moving in our own brands towards the more and more premium end. We are by far the market leaders in the premium end, and our premium wines, we call it our elite and premium segments together, have clocked over 35% growth in this quarter, YOY. So that's a fabulous result. That's exactly the trend you're talking about, and Sula is right on top of it. Premiumization is here in case of wines, and more Indian consumers are reaching for a bottle of well-made premium Sula wine.
FTAs could be in place. We don't know when, but the intention is that you will get FTAs in place, which means the duty on alcoholic beverages comes down. That certainly will make a lot of global wine cheaper in India. And that could really hit the premium promise of Sula. Is that a disruptive fear you're worried of?
We have our eyes on it, and we have a seat at the table with the FTA negotiations. Nikunj, you will know that there was already one such agreement signed with Australia about a year ago. And under that, we have not been impacted at all. I think our government understands that this is a very farmer-friendly industry here. This is very important for Indian agriculture, and so they're not going to give it away especially at the more affordable end. The duty concessions that have come at a much higher end. So if you are buying, 4,000 rupees bottles of wine, you're going to see that price coming down to maybe 3,200 rupees. But if you're buying a wine today below 2,000 rupees a bottle, which is 95% of the market, at this point, we don't see any price reduction coming in these FTAs.
How should one look at Sula? I mean, the promise of Indian per capita will go higher. Indians will consume more premium brands, and the growth will be 15 to 18%. Now, that is something which we know of. What we want to understand next 3 years from now, next 2 to 3 years from now, are there any pockets, or is there a case for Sula to go through a J curve in terms of growth or in terms of margins? I mean, is there an operating leverage which is around the corner, which you're not talking about it today, but market will discover after 3-4 quarters?
So Nikunj, that J curve is already, it's upon us. If you look at our results of the last couple of years, you'll see that we've been moving from a 13, 14, 15% EBITDA margin company to today more like a 28%, 29% EBITDA margin company. So I would say to you that leverage has already come into play in a very strong and a very good way. Now going further than 28% in terms of EBITDA margin is not necessarily something I'm going to get behind. What I would really prefer is to reinvest that money back into the market and convert more Indians to being wine drinkers and get more penetration into that market. I think that's really what we're going to focus on rather than trying to improve margins further. We're very happy with where we've reached today in terms of margins.
Well, cheers to that. That's how we'd like to wrap it up at today's discussion. Good to have you, and thank you for joining us.